you pull on that jersey, you represent yourself and your teammates. And a name on the front is a hell of a lot more important than the one on the back. Get that through your head.
And here we go.
And it is no good. He missed it. Are you kidding me? The season can't end like that.
The playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game.
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
Some goofball in a hat and a red shirt. Now he takes off the shirt. He's running down the middle by the 50. He's at the 30. He's bare-chested and banging his chest. Now he runs the opposite way. He runs to the 50. He runs to the 40. The guy is drunk, but there he goes. The 20. They're chasing him. They're not going to get him. Waving his arms, bare-chested. Somebody stop that man.
Nobody ever tells me anything, so I'm going to try and tell everybody what I know about the SFL. Good evening, happy Friday, everybody. Week 3 on the horizon. A lot of good games to look out for. We're going to go through each and every single one of them to figure out, which one maybe you should be watching if you're not watching your own club here this weekend. So I'd like to have you around. We got some breaking news coming up right now. Vancouver just announced today that free safety Julian Valier is out in Vancouver, cut after inactivity, and free safety Michael Lister from the SFLM champion Madison Lynx will join the Legion, effective immediately, so we should see him suit up for the first time here in week 3 when Vancouver is set to play this weekend. So look for the debut of Michael Lister, and that's everything from what we heard about last week or last 2 weeks from both SFL Crunch Time and a few other sources over the past couple of weeks. So again, Julian Valier out, Michael Lister in Vancouver, and that is how we start off today's show. Don't have a whole lot of information on Lister. Try to pull up some last second details on what he did in Madison over the last couple of weeks. Or last couple of seasons, I should say, but nothing really comes out except maybe a pick over John Michael Sudduth in that championship game in St. Louis. So that works for me, and I hope that works for you. Lister in, Valier out. All right, let's go ahead and get to Now You Know. We got 12 games final time. We'll see 12 games until, I believe, week 10 of the SFL this season as the SFL introduces bye weeks to the pro version of the SFL. We've had bye weeks for the last couple seasons in the minor leagues, so the SFL proper will see bye weeks. Each team will have 2 bye weeks this season and 14-week overall regular season, of course. So a lot of teams going on bye week next week. We'll talk more about that next week. But for now, let's go ahead and get to pick'ems. All spreads are provided by Jack's Data. Thanks to Jack's Data for shooting us out, a whole bunch of stats, whole bunch of ELO and other in-depth stats that, frankly, the league would be, in a different place if we didn't have Jack's Data. So huge thanks to them and their crew. So stats provided by Jack's Data. The SF community on Who You Got is currently 13-11 over the first 2 weeks of the season. And surprisingly, I'm out right there as well, picking against the spread. So 13-11 for both myself and for the SF community. In terms of big best bets, I should say, I'm 1-1. I lost the opening bet picking against Jacksonville week 1. Last week picked Lone Star to beat London. And what do you know? Lone Star came out and did the business against London. And London 0-2. Lone Star 2-0, and 2 teams I thought would be going in completely different directions. Anywho, that's how everything shapes up. Let's go right into the first contest, which is London, Mexico City. This is an early game for them, so the folks across the pond are able to catch it at about 5 o'clock their time. Let's see. Mexico City is favored by 7.5 points, and what I have to say about this matchup here is I think London might be headed back to back to, I'm not going to say the basement, back to mediocrity, maybe finishing below 500 with how things are going. Though this is the game. This is the game for London. If they want to make a statement and turn the corner, this is the game to do it against Mexico City. I don't see it happening. I see Mexico City maybe pulling off an 8+ point victory against London, because if I know one thing, I know Ramos will be heavily preparing for a one-dimensional offense, and it should be, I think, a fairly smooth sailing ball game for Mexico City, unless they come out and play in the snow again, which I don't see happening in Mexico City at any point in particular. Mexico City hold one of the best third down percentage against, only letting opposing offenses convert 49% of the time, and they give up the least amount of first downs, which is something that, as far as the offense goes for London, likes to do that ad nauseum with their high attacking, their West Coast style of offense. So expect Mexico City to come out and win this game, in my opinion. Mexico City over London here in week 3. Moving on to Louisiana versus Tulsa in the Bayou, in the swamp. The Revs are favored by 10.5, and I think that's just good enough. Tulsa, it's been a rough start. They lost Douglas Brown for the majority of that contest last week, and so they'll be looking to probably rely on him. However, Louisiana hold one of the best rushing defenses in the league. In fact, the best in terms of average yards against. Having to face Sioux Falls week 1, we know that offense, at one point or in their history has been known for, pretty potent rushing attacks. Denver, O'Shaughnessy and company. O'Shaughnessy, I think, was held to maybe about 57 yards, if my memory serves me correct. They only have allowed one rushing touchdown, the Revs have, to opposing offenses. With Douglas Brown back in the fold, it will help the Tulsa offense. However, I think the Revolution come out with this one with a fairly strong victory if they can contain, which seems to be a three-headed beast in terms of the wide receiving core. JQ loves to throw to Gabriel Manning, Jason France, and who else did they target last week? Just had this. Corey Jones. There we go. They're the three main targets that JQ will be focusing on. If Louisiana can shut them down, it should be no problem for the Revolution to maintain an above 500 record to start off the season. So Revolution, 10.5. I think that's plenty of points for the Revs to easily cover against Tulsa. Moving on to game number 3. Jacksonville and Vancouver. Vancouver favored by 6.5. I'm picking Jacksonville to cover the spread against Vancouver, and here is why. Vancouver, especially Tom Pepper, relied heavily on their previous matchup against Jacksonville all the way back in week 11, 2 seasons ago. And during that football game, Tom Pepper didn't throw threw a couple of touchdowns, 2 touchdowns in that meeting, and they relied heavily on Robert Redford to rush down the field and score 3 touchdowns in that ball game. They scored. Robert Redford had a fantastic day on the ground, 238 yards in that previous contest. However, Jacksonville's defense has gotten stronger since that Week 16 matchup. In season 16, they were one of the best rushing defenses. However, so far here, only 2 seasons of play, the rush defenses, both rush defenses for both Jacksonville and Vancouver are ranked in the bottom half. Vancouver have the second to worst rushing defense, allowing just on average 152 yards a game. Jacksonville averaging about 129 yards against on the ground. But the one thing that Jacksonville does have going for them is their takeaways. They are a very, very hungry defense. They are number 1 in takeaways and number 1 in turnover differential. So if Marcus Dunhill can keep hold of the football, and if they can continue to keep that offense off the field, which I think they will, Jacksonville has a strong chance of keeping this game close, and I think they will do just that, as Vancouver is still finding, I wouldn't say that, I got to take that back. Vancouver's not really finding their way. This is a game of two unbeaten teams. So I expect this one to be close. That's all. That's what I have to say. These games should be pretty close. A game to watch to be sure. But I do see Jacksonville keeping it close, under 6.5 points compared to the spread. Moving on to game number 4, Baltimore and Fort Worth. And this is no offense to Fort Worth, but Baltimore, I don't think, should have any trouble with this Fort Worth team. The offense for Fort Worth has become much more consistent over the past 2 games. However, Baltimore's offense and defense are just leagues above everyone else at this point. Baltimore's offense is top 5 in almost all but 3 categories in terms of offense. Their defense is top 10 in all but 1 category on defense. That being passing yards against for their defense. That you must play a perfect game against Baltimore. I don't think Fort Worth's offense is up to that task just yet, especially with a rookie quarterback in Johnny Reno. And there's no slide against Johnny Reno. He's going to be fed to the vultures here coming up. So Baltimore should come away with the victory. Moving on now to game number 5, DC and Lone Stars. I go ahead and try and fix something here real quick. Give me 1 second. There we go. All right. Sorry about that, everybody. Okay, game number 5, DC and Lone Star. I'm picking DC to cover the spread, and here is why. It's a quarterback matchup, in my opinion. Ace Fennick is a solid quarterback, but I think Shabazz Synergy is better, and the stats prove it. Shabazz is better so far this season in terms of pretty much every single category. Touchdowns, Ace Fennick does have a couple more touchdowns than Synergy. However, what I'm looking at is consistency. Ace Fennick is completing roughly around 68%, while Shabazz is completing around 75%. Expected to be a close game. I still think Lone Star can still maybe pull out a victory, but I expect this game to be decided by 3 points or less. That's what I'm going with. So both defenses and offenses are about the same in terms of strength. DC may be a little bit worse in terms of yards given up. However, they're right on track with Lone Star when it comes to touchdowns being allowed. So expect this to be a very tight ball game, and I think a pretty solid performance from both clubs. Expect to be watching this one here on Saturday. Moving on to game number 6, final game going on Saturday. Denver and Sioux Falls. And the one thing I cannot completely grasp yet is Sioux Falls and their consistency. However, their defense was really good last week against St. Louis, and they put their offense in horrendous spots. Julian Tyree only, threw for about 170 yards last week against Sioux Falls because their defense put them in prime field position. Denver is not going to give Sioux Falls the luxury of finding their way into the end zone as easily as I think Louisiana did. Denver is the best team when it comes to third down percentage against, only allowing teams 31%. And those two teams were Louisiana and Atlanta, 2 very solid teams in my opinion. Sioux Falls, needs to be able to convert on third down. They are one of the worst teams on offense when it comes to that. They're ranked 20th with 46% converting on third down. Meanwhile, Denver's offense converts at a nice 63% clip. So I think Denver should take care of business here on Saturday night when they play Sioux Falls. In Sioux Falls, I think 7.5 is a solid spread. I think Denver can cover that spread rather nicely. Moving on to Sunday's games. First time we've seen Sunday games in season 18. Houston, Queen City get us off, and I think 10.5 is just too big for Queen City to cover. They had a very nice game last week when they played Mexico City in the snow. Now they head back down south when they were last in Texas. They played Lone Star and lost 17-35. Houston is probably not the same caliber of team that Lone Star is this season. However, I expect them to play just as hard, if not, up to the task that Lone Star was. Houston will have the luxury of playing at home, give or take how much that is. But for Houston to not win less than 5 games would be the first time they have not won more than 5 games in about 4 seasons, going all the way back to season 14. So Houston has to win one game eventually, in my opinion. I think they take down Queen City with some solid performance, I think, from the offense. I think the offense turns it around here in Queen City, and I think they will keep this ball game tight after the embarrassing loss to Baltimore right back there in their own dinks. I think 10.5 is just a bit too much here for this football game. If we want to take maybe a closer look, Queen City has had the advantage of being at home last 3 contests. However, Houston did win the first of those 3 contests and have won the only contest that this matchup was when Houston was at home. They are sputtering out of the gate, Hunter Norwood, but I think Hunter I think we should be looking out for Houston here as they approach the end of their first quarter of their schedule. Houston to cover the spread with 10.5, provided by Jack's Data. Game number 7, Atlanta and St. Louis, and I think Atlanta is just maybe a little bit too much for Christian Brown and company to handle. Christian Brown cannot throw 6 interceptions. I think Bryant Dynasty is the better quarterback. However, he's been kind of shaky the last couple, or at least to start out the season. Only, 2 touchdown passes for Bryant Dynasty, if I have my stats correct. Yes, only 2 touchdown passes for Bryant Dynasty so far this season. Something has to give for Dynasty to try and get up. But one thing that has been working for BDG or for Atlanta is BDG Hollywood starting to find some traction, especially late on in ball games. That'll help the offense tremendously. St. Louis will probably keep things tight, but expect maybe a little bit more running from Cairo Martinez. If Cairo Martinez, can have about the same type of production that he had when he was playing St. Sioux, my apologies, when playing Sioux Falls. It should be a much more balanced game for St. Louis, but I think Atlanta will come out with the victory as they have, a nice couple of stats. They are third in terms of points given up on average per game, first in yards against per game, and second in terms of passing touchdowns and rushing touchdowns. They don't have to give up a lot of touchdowns in the football game. Also, they're tied for first when it comes to turnover differential as well. I think St. Louis, if they're going to be turnover happy, which I'm going to guess they are, Atlanta should cover the spread 7.5. But that wouldn't surprise me if St. Louis does take the spread. But I'm picking Atlanta here in official picks. All right, moving on to game number 9, and this is our very first pick'em, where there is no advantage given to either side from Jack's Data. This is a straight up pick between Charleston and Portland. And I firmly believe that Charleston is a much better team on the field when it comes to the SFL. Portland is a great organization, but when it comes to teams that I know are going to perform day in, day out, it is going to be Charleston. And you can just look just as far as their third down percentage on offense. Charleston is the best team so far this season when it comes to third downs, converting third downs at a 77% clip. That's phenomenal. They are the third best team in passing touchdowns with 5 all told. Portland has one of the better rushing attacks with the third most rushing yards and the third most rushing touchdowns. However, Charleston's defense is third best when it comes to that, only giving up 60 yards on average a game. I think Charleston should take this victory. I think there should be a spread for Charleston to maybe come out with the victory, though I can see why it's fairly close because that's pretty much the only stats that are really jumping out to me are those categories. Everybody else is kind of sitting toward the back half of the rankings. Like let's take a look at passing yards per game for Charleston. They're about 13, so just on the back half. When it comes to Portland, they are dead last in terms of passing yards. When it comes to passing yards given up on defense, Charleston is in fact the worst team. They give up around 375 on average per game. The takeaways for Portland are about mid-table, maybe a little bit lower, with only 4 takeaways and their turnover differential being -2. They've given up the ball 6 times. So I expect Charleston to win this football game here in week 3. Final 3 matchups. Game number 10 is Carolina and Florida. Florida has yet to lose to Carolina, and I think it continues to here. It's my best bet this week. Florida favored by 6.5. I think they're going to easily cover. I think it'll be a touchdown or more points margin of victory for Florida. Again, we saw Charlie Boletsky, who was stifled against San Diego in week 1, have a field day against Portland in week 2. Both teams have played San Diego. Now Carolina has beaten San Diego. Florida has lost to San Diego. So maybe that's a little bit of thing going for Carolina. But I think Florida here this week are just a better team. They are top 10 in all but one category on offense. And the defense that's Carolina top 10 and everything on offense. Florida's about mid-table, only number 2 in rushing yards and number 1 in takeaways. Carolina, number 2 in takeaways given up, I should say, with 3. Carolina's offense is pretty good. I think Florida's offense, though, will be much more consistent as Carolina looks to maybe continue with maybe an upset victory. However, I'm picking Florida over Carolina here in this one. Okay, number 11. This is another Pacific Division matchup, San Diego and Los Angeles. Los Angeles, coming into this game, are looking to continue the streak of home team winning the matchup. San Diego won the home tie last season. Los Angeles won the home tie when it was the first ever matchup for San Diego in their franchise history. Los Angeles beat them 31-17 in that game. As far as the offense goes for San Diego, the offense looks a little bit better. I'm liking what I'm seeing as far as consistency goes. Therefore, I'm picking them to cover a very tight spread of 3.5. Los Angeles, really, it seems they like to keep things close. Last 2 games have been decided by 6 points or less. Of course, Vancouver being the game last week after the freeze. As far as Carolina goes, they're looking to San Diego goes, they're looking to maybe have a 7-point difference either in a win or a loss. So either expect San Diego to play hard on the road and come out with a very tight victory, or just keep it close to a field goal, or expect Los Angeles to come out with a very tight victory in their own end. Therefore, I'm picking San Diego because it looks like a much more favorable outcome for San Diego to keep it close. All right, final game of week 3. This coming up on Sunday evening. This is Las Vegas and Arizona. In Arizona, Ashley Jackson has to get a passing touchdown at some point. She has 0 right now. So, what do you do if you're Eddie Gage? You game plan for Las Vegas. You game plan so that Ashley Jackson can find one of her new targets in either Weston or Owens, or maybe even get TJ Punk involved again, because the passing offense for Arizona has to pick up at some point. You cannot go 3 weeks of the season without throwing a passing touchdown and expect to get back into the playoffs. Las Vegas coming off a nice win over Tulsa. Their defense looks pretty good. Again, for a majority of that game, they didn't have to face Douglas Brown, and that led to Tulsa being a little bit more one-dimensional in the passing attack. So expect a closer game for Las Vegas, but expect Arizona to win, in my opinion. All right, that's going to do it here for another edition of NETMA, and the final one of this week. So 2 days of week 3 action, Saturday and Sunday. Go ahead and watch some more football, and we'll catch you right back here on NETMA Monday evening. And until then, everybody, enjoy week 3, enjoy the SFL, and we'll see you next time. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night.